Yeah, I think there was, to your point, a better balance, and I think I had posted earlier today that, somebody asked me what this team needs to be. And from the very first day that Gregg Berhalter took the job, he has talked about, fundamentally changing the way this team plays. And when you say that, what you're really saying is we want to keep the ball more, we want to be more um, progressive in the way that we think and the way that we play, more romantic and all that. And that's all fine and well, because a lot of times you look at the best teams around the world and that's what they do. Saying it and doing it are two different things. I do think that he has evolved this team and progressed this team towards that goal. But I also think at times he is fearful of how it will look if he becomes pragmatic. And, I've said that I think that this U.S. team, incredibly talented, plenty of depth, arguably better talent, who knows, but arguably. But I think for this team to really be successful, they have to worry about being the best version of what we have been, as opposed to trying to be something that we are not. And again, this doesn't mean you have to dumb it down. It doesn't mean you can't play out of the back. But tonight, I think we saw a real good balance of when and what hill to die on and when to say, you know what, we're going to live to fight another day and we will, rally the troops and come back. But there's still an element of wanting to do things that I just think individually and collectively this team is not yet capable of doing, and that can get you into problems. It didn't tonight, and I love that, and I hope they use the positive and go back and look at this game going forward to use it right in Copa America going forward. But one of these moments, these decide games, and these can be historic in terms of deciding whether to hit that ball in. And I know it's romantic, but at times you just have to say, you know what, we're not going to do that going forward.
Yeah, the eternal play out of the back debate. I think people on both sides of that argument had some material to work with tonight. There was a stretch in the first half, certainly, where the U.S. kept trying to play through the press and giving the ball away, and it ultimately led to Brazil's goal. So I could see that being frustrating to people like you who wonder why are we doing this? Why not play long, post up Pepe, try to do something else? And yet there were also some lovely moments where the U.S. was able to play through pressure, and you could see Gregg Berhalter's vision coming together. And what that does when you're able to break that initial press, then it opens up all sorts of space, and you can cut up the field. So we sort of saw both sides of that coin tonight.
Yeah, at times when we played out of the back, I thought that Mosse in particular, he does this thing, and we've seen it over the years, and it's kind of gone away a little bit of late, but he gets in that little pocket, and the guys are confident enough to play him, and he gets that first touch, and then his second touch is an incredible burst that creates a separation from whoever is on him, and that's wonderful. But there is an element where I'm holding my breath, and the irony is that someone like Gio Reyna, who we know has incredible skill and talent and touch, he's not showing up in those types of positions. So again, it's not that I don't want to play out of the back or I look down on playing out of the back. Absolutely not. And there were times where it was not just pretty, but it was possession with purpose to get to the other side of the field and to open up, especially against a team like Brazil, and maybe even more so against a team like Colombia. But I got the feeling that the Colombia team was just waiting for these stupid Americans to play a dumb pass and then just gobble it up. And I think that this team tonight kept Brazil more on their heels in terms of what that. No, Brazil's not going to lose any sleep, by the way, about this result going forward. They're going to go back and they'll go into the tournament. And Brazil and my wife will say, yeah, but the only thing that ultimately matters is how you do in the tournament. And if you were to beat Brazil and go past Brazil in a tournament, that's a whole nother level. And so when Gregg Berhalter goes to bed tonight and he puts his head on the pillow and he thinks about what this team is and what this team isn't, and he looks at his responsibility and he goes through all the different things that he did to prepare the team for Colombia and all the different things or maybe things that he did or didn't do relative to the game against Brazil, is he left with a real concrete reaction as to why there was a difference. And look, I'm sure that all coaches at times will not fall asleep when they're in that moment, because they say, you know what, I wouldn't have done anything differently. And yet I have two massively different types of results, despite despite what I did. Now you got to be introspective and you have to take your responsibility. And sometimes, you know what? It's one of those days where things just don't go right. But to your point, you got to be able to follow it up with a consistency. And the best teams in the world and the elite teams in the world, which is what we're trying to be able to compete against and not just beat, but consistently be able to be in games, which is something we haven't been able to do. That's what they do. And so now, so what do we have ahead of us? All right, we got a game against Bolivia. We should beat Bolivia. And we will not learn probably a whole lot about this team other than they are in a tournament situation. There are fans in the stands, and it is a means to an end to hopefully win a tournament. But if and when the U.S. beats Bolivia, if they don't, it's a big problem. But if they do, you got to take it with a grain of salt because you should beat Bolivia. Then you go against Panama. I think we've talked about it on the pod and certainly on this call about the realities of the CONCACAF competition. And the U.S. is almost, not in an arrogant way, but grown out of CONCACAF if they really want to be elite. And then that third game, to Mosse's point, that's Uruguay. And that's big boy type of stuff. And that's a real opponent. And that's one that if and when you show there is a consistency of playing up to that performance, to that opponent, that's going to be, I mean, I'm not discarding or throwing away those first two games, but let's be honest. If you slip up in those first two games, then there are much bigger problems. So then you get to that third game and you have to show the same type of tenacity, the same type of execution, and the same type of mentality that we saw tonight against Uruguay. And then you go into the next round. And to your point, being able to show it consistently. And just because you show it consistently doesn't mean you're going to win every single game. But this disparity that we saw with this team against Colombia and this team tonight, it's almost as if they're two different teams. So what has happened? Did he have a come to Jesus type of situation? I'm talking about Gregg Berhalter with this team. All right. Did he change the way that he approached it? Did he, serve them red Gatorade instead of green Gatorade? Whatever the hell he did, he's got to be able to replicate that regardless of the opponent going forward. You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops twice a week right here on my very own YouTube page. The only way to stay up to date is to hit that subscribe button down below. Size the day, and see you soon.